Hi and welcome to this short video. In this lesson I'll be talking about how to correct comma splices, sentence fragments, and fused sentences. And this is really important because these are some of the most common errors that I see in student essays. Recognizing complete sentences. So you need to recognize when you're writing a full sentence or not. You obviously want to be writing full and complete sentences when you're writing your assignments. And often I see sentence fragments, which are just part of sentences, and they're punctuated as if they're sentences. That's a sentence fragment, so you want to avoid that. Okay, so this is how you know if you created a complete sentence or not. You need to know the difference between a main clause and a subordinate clause. A main clause, or an independent clause, consists of one or more subjects. That's the noun of the subject. We talked about that in active-passive voice lessons. And one or more verbs that express a complete idea. So you need to have a complete idea expressed in the independent clause or main clause, and you'll find a subject of the sentence and a verb, a noun and a verb. A subordinate clause also consists of a subject and a verb, but they cannot stand alone as a complete sentence. Okay? So whether it's a main clause or a subordinate clause, both of these have a subject and a verb. But the difference is that the main clause can stand alone as a sentence and the subordinate clause cannot stand alone. Identify the main and subordinate clauses in the following sentences. I'm just going to walk you through these. So I've made the different clauses, I've separated them by putting them in italics. The subordinate clauses, in fact, are in italics. When we finished dinner, we went to the movie. Okay, so there's two clauses here that make up this sentence. There's a subordinate clause and a main clause. In the subordinate clause, you know it's subordinate. You know it can't stand alone as a sentence because of that word when that leaves you hanging. That makes it a subordinate clause. It still has a subject, we, and it still has a verb, finished. Here's the main clause, or the independent clause that could stand as alone. And in fact, you could punctuate this as a sentence. This could be a complete sentence. Main clauses can be complete sentences. We went to a movie. We is the subject and went is the verb. And that can stand alone because there's no word like when that leaves you hanging. Here's another one. The movie, which starred Colin Firth and Keira Knightley, was a success. In this sentence, the main clause is split. The main clause is the movie was a success. The movie is the subject, was is the verb, a form of to be, and then a success. Which starred Colin Firth and Keira Knightley is the subordinate clause, and which is the subject, and starred is the verb in that case. That's a tricky one. Sentence fragments and comma splices. A sentence fragment is a grammatically incomplete sentence. Okay? A sentence needs a subject, a verb, and sometimes an object to be complete. There are sentences in English that are complete sentences with simply a subject and a verb. Most sentences in English, though, do have a subject, verb, and an object. You definitely need a subject and a verb to have a complete sentence. A comma splice is another error. So these are sort of two errors. The comma splice is different from the sentence fragment. And the comma splice occurs when two main clauses are joined by a comma with no conjunction to show how the clauses are related. Finally, we have the fused sentence, or a run-on sentence. Run-on sentence is not simply a long sentence, as some people think. A fused sentence or run-on sentence contains two or more main clauses, but there's no punctuation to show how the clauses are related. It's basically two sentences put together with no punctuation as if they're one sentence. This can be corrected in the same way as a comma splice. So be sure not to create a comma splice by merely putting a comma between the main clauses. If you have a fused sentence, you do not just want to put a comma between the two main clauses, then you have a comma splice. Thank you very much for listening to this short video on writing better sentences. And this is really just an introduction to correcting comma splices, sentence fragments, and fused sentences. In order to get a full understanding of these errors and how to correct them, you do need to read the appropriate pages in the textbook as I've indicated in the course module. Thank you very much.